Hello, everyone, and welcome to another program. We are here for another instance of Artist Response to a Moment. My name is Joy Davis. I'm the manager of adult and community programs here at the Walters Art Museum. And today I'm so excited to introduce you all, if you don't already know, to Amy Reid and Pangelica. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And I wanted to hop right into the questions, but before I do that, I want to plug your work that you did for our Art Sound Now series that is up right now called Immortal Voices. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to keep glued to this program, but then go check it out afterwards for context. So my first question is, what is your origin story and how did you come to collaborate together?
You want me to take it away?
Take it away.
So in 2014, I guess I was really fed up with seeing just a lot of like male-dominated shows. And so I wanted to start something more inclusive and kind of center femmes and LGBTQ folks in the music and art scene in Baltimore. And then Pan rocked my world in like 2016, 17.
Yeah. So I had just moved to Baltimore back because I'm originally from here, but I lived in Chicago. And when I came back here, I very much was like trying to get into performing here. And one of the first shows that I played in Baltimore was a girl power show. And me and Amy just really clicked. She was one of the first person to give me an opportunity to play here. And she mentioned like maybe us collaborating with Girl Power, and it just all went from there and blossomed.
And had you all worked together before you guys coming together for Girl Power or performance in that entity? Did you know about each other beforehand? That's wild.
I knew about Amy through like mutual friends, but we never really like worked together.
That's wild. The reason I say that's wild is because you all seem to come together so seamlessly, so quickly, and so that's pretty impressive. As we are giving you a reminder, feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll be sure to answer those at the end of the program. So if you could define for us, what is Girl Power? Not just the concept, but your entity of Girl Power, and how is this project different? The project that you did for us, how is it different from Girl Power?
You want to take that, Amy?
Sure. Well, I guess a lot of the times recently, I feel like a lot of our endeavors have been supporting other people, and we're kind of more behind the scenes. And I feel like this time it's kind of, we're focusing on us as musicians, which is an identity that I feel like over the course of Girl Power we're trying to like get back into. Is the reason why we started was for to elevate women LGBTQ musicians. So we're included in that. And
yeah,
I think that sometimes people know Girl Power as like party throws, which we are. And there's a lot that goes into that, but we have our own music practice. So this was really a beautiful moment to kind of get back to that.
And I think what's interesting about Girl Power is that it's kind of nomadic in a way. It doesn't approach the same event the same every single time. There might be some cohesion, of course, but there's different ways you all mix it up. And so I think it's important to note that you get a different show every time when it comes to Girl Power. And you work really, as you mentioned, really hard to make sure that it's a unique experience each time. I don't know if you all want to speak to that, kind of how you craft each individual experience. I'll say experience and not just party.
It's very much so in the fantasy, us materializing our fantasy, and we're very strict about our mission. So everything from the bottom up with our events or any programming that we do is gonna include femmes, queer people, people of color. We're very strict about that. So although like our programming might seem very diverse, you're always gonna see like we hire only like those people. That's like always the constant control.
Love it. And I love the work that you do. And I've been lucky to go to a few of these, not as many as I, of course, would love to go to. And I'm looking forward to the future of what that's going to look like. I figured we'd dig into the performance itself. And I'm really curious if you could tell us some of the inspirations for your performance. And then also, if you have experiences with these said inspirations, the objects that you used in the presentation, in the performance. What is your connection to those pieces? And then also what's your inspiration?
Yeah, I think when we first started talking about doing art sound now as girl power, immediately we were like, okay, how are we gonna bring this into the context of what we do? And like I said earlier, from the bottom up, where we only focus on our mission. I don't want to say only, but our mission is very important to us. So as soon as we started thinking about it, right away we went through the catalog of the Walters and looked for pieces that centered women. And also, like, because it's such a weird time and Walters isn't open, I also had to just like rely upon my memory and like what exhibits really stood out to me. And for me, the ancient Egypt has always been an exhibit that really stood out to me, and the fact having that mummy in the middle of the room is it just like always would like capture me. And so when I was thinking and I was looking through, like, okay, what pieces of art are made by women, or what pieces of art use women as the muse, then it just like clicked to me, this particular object that I've always kind of bonded with. And that is kind of how I picked the Unknown Woman. What about you, Amy?
I feel like I kind of fed off of, I don't know, I think we both have this mutual understanding of both picking pieces relevant to girl power and girl power's mission. And actually, and forgive me, I don't know what it's called, but I think the Walters features like an art piece a day on the website, or maybe it's per week. I'm not sure what it is, but that was like the featured artwork Amphitrite when I visited the webpage. So I got really excited, just like, I was like, maybe I'll research this piece. And then I dove deep in reading kind of like Greek mythology about her. And I got super excited that she's this like aquatic goddess. So I feel like I'm so drawn to water, and just trying to think about that and like how that plays into the identity of a woman, and like that just kind of spiraled.
I love that there was a spiral. I also want to just mention, as some behind the scenes for folks, is that Pangelica was like very focused on the mummy and like coming up with like this concept very quickly, kind of attaching your work but also to the artwork, which I thought was really poignant and doesn't always happen like so quickly. And so I think that was like fun to watch and engage with.
Yeah, I think I think me and Amy both kind of had this aha moment at the same time. And it's funny because like when we were like thinking about art sound now, we didn't really talk about as much like what pieces we were gonna pick, but we still had the same kind of like mind frame of like where we were gonna go with it. And then when we like told each other about what we were interested in, it just like made like complete sense that we were so in sync with that.
Even just like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's pretty magical, but go ahead.
No, it is. And just like, I feel like through Pan, like talking about why she was interested in her piece, like then I was like, okay, I feel like that's how it all connected, is like we had time to work on it ourselves and then be like, all right, how do we fit this together? So that was really fun and kind of a new way of working.
Yeah, and I have a question about that later, about just how you all did work on the piece. And I'm curious about your process for composing said pieces. Like, I think a lot of people see the end product, which is both the composition and the visuals and the inspiration. But I'm really curious about how you composed each piece, and then what were the components, or maybe a couple of your favorite components about each of your pieces.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about yours first?
Sure. Again, it's funny. I feel like the word for like this entire thing is like fluid, is what I keep coming back to. And even just in terms of composing it, I feel like just in terms of like the climate of right now, the only space I have to work on things are like things that are going to be therapeutic or like, I don't know. So I feel like for this, anytime I had an idea, I would like go and just start it, take a break, and like come back to it. And it wound up being a really healing process for me too. So I started it off with vocals, and the reason why is because Amphitrite is known for her voice. She's like the manifestation of the sea. And a little fun fact that like really stuck with me was that it was said that her voice is the only thing that could calm Poseidon when he was like raging. So I kept thinking about that and just what it means to use your voice for like literally exerting peace and like peaceful moments. And for me, that's what ambient music is and does. Like it puts me in a really good place. So even working on it, it's the same way, same feeling. So I started off singing and just kind of like using different technology to make it stretched and low and high and all these different tones so that it sounded like it was underwater.
So that was the result you wanted, was kind of like a underwater exchange, I guess, with the viewer, the visitor, the listener.
Yeah, totally. And then I wanted it to really travel into like a hopeful element. So I feel like that's also really crucial right now. So I brought in like rhythms and other synths, like arpeggiations to kind of like boost it into this like aquatic symphonic ending, which is what I hope it achieved. But
For me, my process is a lot more chaotic. But so just going back to my inspiration for the piece, I was very inspired by the Egyptians' regard for preparing their dead. And it really hit me because I made a connection to modern times. And like when we had first started working on this piece, I just recently went to a memorial for Black women, and it was very beautiful. It was organized by Amherst Ebony, and it was like I had the opportunity to participate in a ritual and honoring the dead, and like we all contributed to an altar to the dead, and these are like all fallen women, Black women who have been, their lives have been cut short, whether it be through domestic violence, homophobia, transphobia, or just like the police state. So just thinking of like being able to participate in this ritual and honoring the dead, I got really obsessed with it. So my process just became very like that. Like when I compose music, I play my synthesizer live. So what you're hearing is like me actually playing in the moment. And like the way that that gets chaotic is that I want to like take myself into the zone. Like I want to like be like in a meditative state, and like it was really important for me to just like manifest this voice for this unknown woman and take myself to a place of whatever intent her loved ones had for her when they prepared her body, and whatever wishes that she had for herself in the afterlife, and manifest in my process. So it was very much so me at my desk late at night. I could see the moon through my window and just playing, and then I just keep what I like. And like even if I do like something but I wasn't like feeling the right vibe, I just crashed it. It was like my process was very chaotic because like for me, I think what differentiates music, you can be skillful, but for me, if the emotion isn't, if the actual musician isn't feeling the emotion behind it, then it's worthless to me. So it was definitely a very chaotic experience. And then you can kind of, I don't, I don't, I don't necessarily think that the chaos, it came out very controlled. Like the beginning of the piece is very drone like, and then you hear this tension with a very harsh synth over the drone, and then that breaks. And my favorite part is when it breaks, and then you get the flute, the warbled flute sounds, and then that also breaks, and you get the afterlife, which is like beautiful bliss, oasis, everything. And like to me, that was like literally me, like at my desk, sleep deprived, hair all over the moon, seeing UFOs, and just like going crazy. I don't know if I took that too far.
No, you definitely didn't. I appreciate you sharing kind of the origin for the choice and how you melded a very important and pivotal moment that is happening right now, but also like your connection to that as well as to the artwork and how we're still all trying to figure out like kind of like that, how do we pay respect, how do we do this consistently, how do we keep the energy right, because it's quite a difficult thing to do. I did want to go back to the thing about chaos versus how I felt that the impetus for the origin story for the piece is actually quite grounded. It's like really grounded. And so it's interesting that you felt that there was chaos, but overall I think that it's very, like you said, it actually overall comes together very controlled. Maybe it's because of that grounding, that event and partaking in the ritual, but not to say that chaos is bad. I'm just,
I think that I do this thing with my art where I kind of make a sacrifice of my sanity to make sure that like my mission is accomplished and the intent is accomplished. And like because the topic was so important to me, and the idea of this unknown woman just she was like prepared and mummified and put in this beautiful cartonnage, and she was excavated from her resting place, and that's chaotic to me. But I don't know if this is making complete sense, but I feel like I just, for me, I had to sacrifice. The chaos came into me sacrificing my sanity in order to present this beautiful product at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. I'm sure our audience does, but I truly appreciate you making that sacrifice. I think it's also interesting to think about it that way. And maybe some artists out there are looking at your work and how you are, how you're speaking about your work and might actually relate, even if they don't think of it in the same way. But I do think that it does take a little bit of sacrifice to get results of what you want. And so, but I think that that's very tricky in a tightrope walk to weave, to get, to be able to pull yourself back and just, ride the tightrope. I don't know if Amy, you wanted to, if you had any other things to say before I move on.
No, not really. The only thing I do want to add is actually for Pan's piece, the sample you used was really cool. And I feel like that was like an important part of your piece. And I don't know if you want to talk about that, but.
Yeah, so I did a lot of research in the beginning before I even touched any music equipment and started composing the piece. And I got really obsessed with learning about tribes in Africa that live along the Nile. And I found this one tribe called the Almolo tribe, and they're like a fisher tribe, and they survive off of this lake that's not too far from the Nile called Lake Turkana.
Mm.
And everything about they lived a hard life. Like, there's no idea of work hours, work week. They work like to survive in this harsh environment, right? Like, wake up, go fish, get as much food as possible, and take care of the village, and that's it. But a big part of their culture was music, and like they would celebrate everything. And it was just beautiful. Like, they wake up, they sing a song. When they wake up, they send the fishers off to go get fish. They sing a song. When the fishermen come back with the fish, they sing a song. Before they eat the fish, they sing a song. After they eat the fish, they sing a song. It was just like, I was just like really inspired by, like, although their life was like very labor intensive, they were surrounded in joy and song.
Mm.
And that's why I chose to use that sample from them. Um, and I just like the idea of, like, all they're using is their voices, their feet, their hands, and it's still very beautiful. And so the sample song it's actually their thank you song. So when the piece, basically the moment that I bring the sample in is towards the end. So you have the beginning that's very drony, that is kind of like meditative, and then that goes to a rebirth into the afterlife, which is the middle part, and then the huge climax is the bliss that you receive, like finally making it into the afterlife, and then that's when I cue in the thank you song. And I think for me, it's relevant because I feel like um, when you talk about like the afterlife, it's you have to you just have to give yourself over to the mysticism, and like you have to be a believer, right? And if you believe, then you believe that also the dead are thankful to you for honoring them in whatever way their culture sees fit. So I stuck that in there because I thought that that's also another way of me saying thank you to the unknown woman that is at Walters.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up actually I'm really glad that we had this like linear thing with questions. I have a question about research and how you developed it during this process, and you kind of hinted at that with the sample. And I'm curious if there were other things that developed during this process, and how that manifested into some of the visuals for the performance.
Totally. I think one of the things we keep talking about also is like ritual. And I feel like from Pan's experience, that's when I was like, this is awesome, in a way to like give thanks or pay homage to. So I think for my visuals, again, we were talking about like altars. So we both set altars for our pieces. And for mine specifically, it was, very aquatic, and things like candles.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to couple that with like current moments as this way to mark time and connect time from the past, present, and allude to the future. And for me, again, that space is water, because most bodies of water connect in some way, shape, or form, at least unless it's like a lake. But I like that passing on of information. I think there's a lot to be found in that. Like, I feel like the water is this super unknown territory. We know so much about land, but water we don't, and this information just gets passed on and passed on. So I feel like that space, and also in terms of like it being a therapeutic space for me, going to the water is like crucial. I'm literally at the beach right now. So I took footage at Gunpowder for my water shots, because I keep going there. Again, like nature right now it's like one of the spaces we can all go to. So yeah.
And I think for you, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was a lot of your research was like in the physical, like actually like being in that space was like very like valid to your research and your process.
Totally. And we both, Pam and I talk about that a lot, like just giving yourself permission to like sit down and work on music. That's like, that is a healing experience, and that is elevating your physical voice as a person. So I think that just being like making time to say, I'm going to go and I'm going to sit by the water by myself, or I'm going to go and I'm going to sit down at my desk by myself. Yeah, I think you are totally right. That became my research for sure.
I think it's important to bring that up. Thank you, Pangelica, because I think we often think that research sits in a very specific silo and that you can't really, if it's not in a book or if it's not told by someone that of intellect, right, or the perceived intellect, then you can't really learn necessarily. It's almost like, or it's not as valid. So I think it's important to think about research beyond just like a book. I'm a scholar, I love books, but I think it's important to move beyond that when it's necessary or relevant. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and thanks for sharing. Why is it important for you all to center femmes around your art practice? You've talked about it a little bit, but I just want to like hit the nail on the head. Why that's key for you all?
What do you think?
I mean, I guess just even thinking about in terms of like museum settings, you know, you have like women all, like figures of women all in museums and things like that. But in terms of artists actually making work, like how many of those artists were women? So I feel like a lot of times we're exoticized, we're fetishized, but we're not actually the makers that are featured. It's just our bodies. So I think, again, just like us doing what we do and being fierce about what we do and being very vocal about what we do, that's, yeah, I hope that sort of answered.
I wanted to add a layer that also, you know, as far as like history is concerned, written narratives is also not usually or typically written at a certain point by women. So these narratives of women are written by or femmes are written usually by males. So therefore the perspective is already skewed when you try to do the research we were just talking about.
Yeah, and just to bounce off of that, like even, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go for it.
About what I said about like the Poseidon thing, like literally that's like in the, when you go to research about Amphitrite, that's like one of the first things you see. It's like, why is this Greek mythos, like why is it surrounded by the narrative or centered around the narrative of this like man? Like she has her own narrative. So again,
yeah.
history just kind of.
And for me, I feel like, I mean, me and Amy, we are women, right? And like, I've had the question posed to me, like, so you're a Black artist. What kind of work do you think you can make right now that could serve to, you know, better the political climate? The fact that I'm making the work is a part of the conversation. And I think that's also important to us, and why I think that we do center femmes and women, people of color, queer, non-binary people, is because that's just who we are. Nobody else is going to do it for us. And it's very much that. And like, I don't know, I talk about this all the time, just like how exhausting it is to exist in these spaces where you know, your voice is just not heard. Mm-hmm. And like, girl power does this. We're just like, I don't need your opportunity. We can handle it. We're gonna make our own opportunity. We're gonna make opportunities for our people. And like, I don't want to spend any energy elevating you when you could care less about elevating me. So like, that's like very much so that too. And it's like, I think also who is going to give our community like who's going to like tell the story and like give it the justice that it deserves, like more than people that are actually in the community.
Yep.
I agree. There are two elements of labor. I'm going to go off script just a bit, but there's two elements of labor in what you all were talking about. Pangelica, in your experience, just in being asked such a loaded question of how are you going, because that's almost asking, right, without saying like, how are you going to fix it, right? But it's also kind of saying like, how are you going to fix it? Please tell us. And so I think that question alone is loaded and brings a lot of labor. But I also want to attach it to something that Amy talked about with the featured character of the story of Poseidon, who is known for singing, but that was in the service of, it seems, in the service of Poseidon. So it's really interesting how these elements of labor have been teased out of our talk today. I don't really have any other comments. I just wanted to bring it to the fore that labor is, obviously, when it comes to women or marginalized groups, labor is a very important concept to kind of uplift a little bit.
I think right now in our society and what we're going through, labor is a good conversation, because I feel like people are starting to realize with like COVID and like just like how the economy has been affected in day-to-day life. Labor in particular, I think that people are looking at it in a different way. Like, especially me and Amy, like we were so very much production machines. And when we got ripped away from that, I mean, I'm talking about shows every weekend, girl power things, like really, really just go, go, go. And then when we got taken away from that, we were just like, oh my God, I was exhausted. I was dying. Like, oh my God. Like,
what
I was labor, and like I'm actually like, this labor is worth more than I was getting for it. And I feel like even if you're not an artist, you could relate. You're like, I'm giving my time and my youth, and if not youth, I'm just giving my time. Like, I'm giving my precious life. I'm giving you time. Like, time has this in my life this year, time has become very important to me, because we only got a certain amount of it. And like, I think placing a dollar value to an hour or time in general is an interesting concept in itself.
Yeah.
And then the labor situation, I think it's getting flipped on its head this year.
Yeah.
If it hasn't already in certain circumstances and spaces, for sure. It seems to be.
Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I think Amy was gonna say something poignant, so I'm gonna.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say it's. I think it's coming to the fore in a multitude of ways, and I would agree that this conversation is definitely happening beyond the bounds of a museum or beyond a performance. But I know that has been, not to open this whole can of worms, but that has just been a conversation in performance for quite some time about paying performers what they're owed. And I know that it's a conversation we're consistently trying to have in the museum as well, and I'm sure other museums are having that. As well. And I just wanted to kind of switch gears just a little bit and ask you all, because you did mention this a little bit, but I wanted to tease it out, how your practice and how working together has changed during COVID-19, the pandemic itself, and then also just the revolution of right now. And I know that you all started off the pandemic with having like kind of like midday parties, and those were really fun. I participated in a couple. Well, I participated like doing this, and so I think it was fun. It was an easy way to engage with your platform. But I know that you all have been doing other things, and maybe doing less of some other things. So I would love to know how your all's practices changed since, let's say, 6 months ago.
Yeah, I feel like when we first came out of the pandemic, we were very much so feeling, because we were used to like just like being on the go so much, like, I need something to do. I don't have a show to play this weekend. And that's where the virtual the virtual hangs came from. Our little virtual day party was like basically saying like we don't have gigs, we need something to do, we need something to look forward to. Everything is falling apart. But then even that we got tired of because we were just like, okay, we don't need to keep like producing. Like we need to like chill. And like I think right now for me, I'm like incubating and like thinking big. And I think girl power as well, we are also thinking of the bigger picture, and like now we can kind of zoom out now that life has slowed down a bit.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, is just like, again, like being in this rhythm of like go, 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 and then finally like having the slowdown moment, or just like having to worry about other things as other things dissolve, was kind of like, wow, we were like going really hard and like just can't go that hard anymore once that rhythm is broken. And again, I don't think that is necessarily like, I think we are in that rhythm because like we sort of sometimes have to be, and just like knowing that there's other options, like as weird as this time is kind of freeing in a lot of ways. And like what you were saying about thinking like big, I think that's really important because again, when you are in this rhythm, you just like, I think that's what a capitalism does. It just like keeps you going so you can't see that. And like now that we have like a moment to do that, it's been freeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've heard different things from different artists. For some, they felt that they didn't have time for their practice. So as soon as they had time, like they were just creating, right? Because they felt that they either were neglecting their practice or they just didn't have time to sit and think and be in their practice. And then others like yourselves were active, like very active, but maybe too active. It's important that you all are active because I think you not only provide opportunities for folks, you provide an experience and kind of you provide a lot for the community. So I think it's important, but I also think that element of radical self-care, right, is really crucial. It's like the saying of the no's, the like taking the naps, like all of the stuff.
Yeah,
that's
sorry to cut you off.
No.
But I think also as a musician, there are two parts, maybe more, but there are two major parts to the art form: performance and then the creation.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, although we were like always active, it doesn't mean that we were like you can perform but so much. But I do think at a certain point when you overperform, you do start to hurt yourself, and it does start to cut into the creation side. So like even though like we're like performing and contributing to the community in that way, the creative side does get affected negatively by that, for me at least. Amy's a woman. Amy can like do things. I'm like, girl, where is this album coming from? How did you pull this out of your sleeve? And then she got shows here and there.
I don't know.
We all have different workflows. I think it's okay. It's just like be very gentle with ourselves. Like we're in the middle of a pandemic. I think that oftentimes we not to alarm ourselves, but more to like take stock of the fact that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and to be kind to ourselves and to others as we move through, this big moment. It's important.
And like I said, like for me, like working on a certain type of music is like my zone to be free and my zone to like get in a better state. So I feel like that has been like my work. I don't know. That's like what I've been able to be productive on. Because it's interesting. My initial reaction to this whole pandemic was like, not like, I mean, yeah, maybe the initial reaction was like, yeah, I'm gonna have time to work. And it was like, the unemployment stuff and like not having a job anymore. And like, all of these other things that takes over in your mind. So like, actually working on art was not easy in the beginning at all for me.
Because you're stressed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I hear you on that. Thank you all for sharing today. I just want to overwhelmingly, as we close out, I don't see that we have any questions, but feel free to keep populating them in the comments as this program will be up. ad infinitum. And I just want to thank you both, Pangelica and Amy, for being here, for sharing your work with us, but also your voices with us. Not to be too punny about it, but just sharing your vision and the process of your work. I also want to thank our digital team here at the Walters for making this all possible. So we really appreciate that. And lastly, I want to thank you, audience, for just being here and being awesome and sticking with us and listening to these stories and continuing to come back to program. So we welcome you back to our next set of programs. You can go check that out on our events page. And bye for now. See you all next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.